You know what? I'm gonna re-say what I just said and put it into the non-spoiler section. This book is about the trauma of resiliency. Sometimes when we tell someone that they are resilient, it is not always a compliment. Because what it takes to build resiliency is pain. A lot of pain. Okay, beginning of video footage. This is future stuff, and I'm here to tell you. The end of this video is going to contain a in-depth review. If you are here to hear my entire thoughts about Babel, skip to the end. There's a timestamp. If you want to see the vibes and roller coaster along the way, just play the video normally. Just stay here. Enjoy. Look at these tabs. I'm on a like roller coaster of emotions. I hope you enjoy this vlog.
It could change the world.
Only go.
Bookish family and friends, I can't tell you how excited I am that my aesthetic currently matches the book that I'm reading for this vlog. Hi, I'm Steph. Welcome back to Coffee Over Apples. I'm going to read Babel for this vlog simply because of popular demand. I was asked by a dear friend of mine, AFK, away from the keyboard, to read this with her, and then also I posted online that I just was gonna so happen to be reading Babel, and Mo from Paperback Mo reached out to me and said, hey, I've been thinking about reading this too, so I asked him to join this with me. So I have two buddy reads going on for the same book. Said on Twitter that I was going to post my reactions to it, and then a bunch of people were like, Steph, maybe you should just vlog it, and I was like, that is a fantastic idea. So here we go. I did start reading this. I am currently on chapter 2, and this is the first R.F. Kuang book that I've read, and I have to say I adore her writing. It's so good. It's so good, you guys. I love it. So far, two things I have to say. One, what's it called? I think it's foreshadowing. I could totally be wrong, but in the opening like diagram of this book, it gives us the tower, and it like shows the different levels of the scholars. I noticed there is a woman on the bottom floor and what seems to be male dress on the upper floors, being that this is set in the 1800s in England, so I'm assuming that we're following like binary dressing standards. Does that mean that women are not allowed to be scholars? I don't know. But what I do know is that so far we're following this young boy in China who's been given the name of Robin. We don't know what their actual name is because they are being fit and groomed to fit British upper echelon society, and it's really sad. Like, so far I'm angry. I'm really angry to see the way that this poor boy is being taken advantage of and whitewashed and like groomed to become this person, and how so far it just like you can see that he's very upset, mostly because horrible things are happening to him and his village and his people, but I haven't seen any reaction so far as to their feelings about being whitewashed. And I think that might have something to do just with the fact that, you know, he's young and this is kind of what he's been getting used to this whole time, just being like used to being part of the structure and being at the bottom of the totem pole and being grateful for getting like crumbs, I think. So we will see, but I'm gonna have a lot of feelings about this. I can already tell. It's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt. I already know.
We just came back from the magic draft.
And now we have waffles and cookies and milkshakes. Ugh. I had so much fun, even though I lost, but I got some front cards, so I'll show them to you guys later. Okay, take 2, because I am walking through New York City trying to film this, getting to a party in Times Square, and crazy noises keep happening, like buses and trains and blah blah blah. So I have 2 updates. One is about Babel. I'm loving it so far. I think this might end up being a 5-star read based on the way it's going. I had no idea that I would love R.F. Kuang's writing this much. But something that's really important to note is that there's one thing that this book is doing well that I had an issue with other books that I've read recently, and it's that these horrible things are happening, but clearly for a reason. Like, horrible things that are happening to them and their Indian friend Rami are so messed up, but it's clearly just because there's so much prejudice. It's abundant. Like, there's this one scene where they're in their scholarly outfits and someone comes up to them drunkenly, starts yelling at him to take it off because anyone who's brown should not even be allowed at the school. He thinks he's an imposter, like he stole the outfit, the uniform, because clearly he couldn't be a student, right? Like, it's just so messed up. And that's kind of a moment for Robin where Robin realizes that he is like white passing, and so he tries to do things in order to like prevent Rami from accidentally getting into any trouble, and that's really sad. So I don't know what the reason is. I heard a couple things online. I think also in talking to, might have been Mo, that the reason or justification that was given for all of this by the people who brought the children over is like a hit or miss. So either it ends up being really good or really bad, or like might make or break the book, is what I'm thinking based on what I'm reading online. So I don't know. Like I said, I hope it's a 5-star. We will see, but either way, I'm super invested. And then also, yesterday was Friday Night Magic, so my boyfriend and I go to our local game shop and we play Magic, and it was the pre-release for Lord of the Rings set for Magic the Gathering. I didn't know what I was doing. Like, I don't think any of us knew what we were doing because those cards are like a mess, and I had plans with certain colors to build a certain kind of deck, and it just didn't happen because I didn't get the cards that I was looking for. So I just put something together, but there was one card that I really wanted, and someone later was nice enough to let me buy it from them because I wanted a Radagast the Brown in order to build a deck for my brother, so we can have like family Magic night, which is super fun. But it's been great getting into it. So okay, I think that's all I have to update, and I'm headed to the party. Bye.
Hello, this is a quarter check-in for Babel. Okay, I think I'm officially at the point where I need it to move a little bit faster. I'm about to start chapter 10, and it's becoming a bit monotonous in the sense that I know that the author has some interesting conversations to have around etymology. However, I think that I'm sensing a hesitance to be able to have those conversations outside of an academic setting. So 2 characters that have had a conversation with our main character, Robin, 2 different professors, were talking about what it means to take language. And so one professor in the first conversation was talking with Robin about stealing language, and Robin was making an argument about how when the translators go to different countries and when all this knowledge is acquired, that because the resources with other means or parts of the economy are not equally shared, that it's only a matter of taking that knowledge in order to do something with a resource that is being also taken from the same country in which the languages are being accumulated from, that it's not a fair disbursement of resources. And so in that conversation, that professor was particularly saying, well, if language is an infinite resource because it's not a commodified good at this point, I don't know that I necessarily agree with that, because you have certain individuals who have access to all this knowledge in these libraries, and then they're doing something with that knowledge. So I don't think that point stands very clearly. But in comparison to that, there was another professor who was asking them about the violent act of translation, because of the space that exists between two languages, in which there are certain phrases that just are intranslatable. And this is why the magic system works in a particular way, where you have a bar of silver, and then on one side of the bar you write a particular word, on the opposite side you write the same word or as close to that word in another language as possible, and then any other translations of that similar phrase in other languages around the bar. And it's kind of like this, the in-between meaning of what that is, because there is not a direct one-to-one translation, ends up becoming manifested. So the more knowledge you have, the more you can use that magic, which is clearly a commodification of the languages and the knowledge, right? So, I mean, I think the discussions around hegemony and how the tyranny is so expansive, the setup for how the magic system works, and the conversations that are kind of driving this Robin Hood-esque scenario that we're getting are really strong. And I think the character has so many motivations to make the decisions that, again, assuming this is going into a Robin Hood-like direction, I get it. Like, I would make those same decisions. However, it's dragging, because I feel like they're trying to build investment into the characters, the friendships that Robin has, and I'm not fully as invested in them as I was before, because we get so much of them getting sucked into this aristocratic privileged lifestyle that it's not really being discussed in any way. Like, we just see them becoming that thing so far, and I'm hoping that something happens with that. I'm hoping that we do something with that. I mean, there are conversations about what it means to be a woman in academia at this time, and that there's a real distinction between privileges, who is white passing and who isn't, and what kind of different privileges come with that. But we don't yet have the justification as to why this particular cohort of individuals, who are all foreigners, were allowed into this establishment, other than the fact that, they are fluent in their native languages, and so they bring that fluency with them. But it's focused so much right now on the expansion of British tyranny and conquest that we're not getting that much magic. So it's like, get to the magic kind of already, which is not something that I usually say. I do love a good world build, but it's just like, come on, get the engine going. Like, we're almost 200 pages in or something. Like, you've been talking about magic. Magic is everywhere. Now let's use it for something, because if it doesn't happen soon, I feel like this whole same conversation could have not happened with magic. It could have happened with, I don't know, it could have happened with any other conversation around commerce, or a specific good that's being transferred, between nations. I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure what the specificity of having it being a magical tool adds to this conversation yet, other than it being niche and cool. So we'll see where that goes. Right now it's sitting at a 4-star, but I'm going to check in with you at about halfway. Okay, let's talk Babel. Oh my god, I only have this much left. I'm so scared. I'm so scared and so invested because we are now at the point where the revolution is happening and we're learning more about the secret society who has been upheaving the government and the violence that has happened overseas and what the British Parliament is doing in order to incite violence. And our main characters can no longer disregard the atrocities and the slavery and all of the horrible things that their work stands for, and they have to do something about it. But what's really nerve-wracking is that one of the characters is a white woman, and she is reconciling with her white guilt. And it's frustrating as hell that other characters need to comfort her because she cannot deal with it. She cannot accept that the system is broken. She keeps trying to revert back to the system and saying, but what if we do this? But what if we did that? But what if we told this person? But if we lean on the public and do it in a nice way, people will understand. And like, they're telling her, one, you're risking everybody because everyone else is a person of color. Two, which means that they're gonna die. Like, if someone finds out what they've been doing, they will die. No questions asked. Even no matter how valuable they are, it doesn't matter. Like, in this land, in this time, I say it like it's not also relevant today, but like, you hurt a white man, heads roll, right? So like, no, that's absolutely not. If you mess with anything within the white man's power, heads roll. That's it. It's over. So no, you can't rely on the justice system that created this issue in the first place to solve the problem. But like, her constantly needing emotional comfort and not recognizing that she's supposed to be supporting them, that they're at the bigger risk than her. So freaking true. So well done. I am so impressed with this book. Like, this has all of the nuance that I wanted other things to have. So like, if you want a book that is 110% nuances of what it means to navigate a patriarchal white society, this is doing it so well. I'm so impressed. I actually really love this. Like, it keeps infuriating me. And what I love about it is, like, I thought it was gonna be stronger on the Robin Hood part, where we're actually like seeing things happen and, you know, that big heist and all of that stuff. And it's like, those things happen, but they're not as important as the conversations that are being had between the characters of what is the right and wrong thing to do, how to navigate white guilt, and what our white passing main character does with the privilege that they have, or what it means for them to like cast aside the only thing that they ever thought gave them value, which is so tightly inwoven with the agenda of the government. Is it worth it? And it's not worth it. It's great. I love it. I love this book so much, and you're probably going to be hearing me scream pretty soon because I have like, how many pages do I have left? A little over 100 pages left, which means I'm going to be screaming because shit's about to go down. People are probably going to die. I'm very nervous, and I just want everyone, I love them so much. Main character and their two POC best friends to be protected at all costs. I do care about the other character who's being super freaking selfish, but I also, like, as much as annoying as she is, she's never had to face this. She's never had to face the reality before. Her bubble literally just got burst. So it's like, I pity her. She still goes through her own things as a woman in this society. So it's like, while I understand her and I'm annoyed by her, I get it, and I still want her to survive. If she does something though, if she does something that sends all this into chaos and ends up killing any of the other three characters, I will be so upset. I will be so upset. I will be like, someone take her head. I can't. I feel so many emotions. So depending on how these next 100 pages go, this is easily either going to be a 4-star at minimum or 5-star. If the ending wraps up in a nice bow and my favorite characters are alive, maybe if they die, it'll still be a 5-star. I don't know. It depends on how it goes down. But I'm worried, like, if she does something stupid, it might bring it down to a 4.5 because I've been expecting her to do something stupid the entire time. So if that's the reason that people die, it'll probably be a 4.5 or a 4-star. But if it's not, it might be 5-star. I don't know. Predictions. I could totally change my mind. I don't know. R.F. Kuang is incredible. I'm just... Okay, I'm gonna go. Bye. So angry. I'm so angry. I'm so angry. I'm so angry. Exactly what I didn't want to happen happened. But I'm gonna backtrack what I said a couple minutes ago because it's happening so well. It's happening so well. Like, I'm heartbroken, I'm frustrated, I'm angry, but it's happening in a way that is like, it's making me feel all the emotions and hatred. I hate these people so much. Oh. Okay. So our character said they were having a conversation with someone. Can't say who. But they basically, I'm just gonna quote this. We were ripped from our homes and made us believe that our futures could only consist of serving the crown. We were specially chosen, selected, when really we are served from our motherlands and raised with within spitting distance of a class we can never truly become a part of. We were turned against our own and made us believe our own options were complicity or the streets. There was no favor. It was cruelty. Don't ask me to love my masters. The growth. And I feel so bad that it took these extremes, but the growth. My heart. I love them so much, but nobody's safe. I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. I knew. Ooh. Ooh, I knew it. I'm just gonna say that I knew it. Oh. I'm so upset. Trying to film this end of vlog footage after I pulled my upper back from opening a bag of potato chips. Why is my life like this? Hi. I finished Babel. Alright, roller coaster of emotions as I try to like not move so much. It actually feels good to warm up my muscles, but at the same time, I have like minimal movement. Anyway.
Nightmares are just insights into suppressed emotion!
The hype about R.F. Kuang is so real. So real. This might hands down be my favorite book of 2023. And let's start off with non-spoilery things, and then I will mention when I get into spoilers, but it's gonna be really hard. I suck at non-spoiler reviews, all right? The subtext, or the subtitle of this book gives away a lot more than I thought about. I didn't think about how it's actually called A Necessity for Violence. That is so accurate. That tells you a lot. The foreshadowing is very heavy there. And I think that's a good point to segue into that. This book is very heavy-handed. So even though I love this and I'm giving Babel 5 stars, I am going to make some critical points about it. So even though I say those critical things, I think I still love it. Like, I don't care that there are like little holes that kind of stick out to me, because it did so much that I think is really important. This book is extremely heavy-handed in saying this thing that's happening here is wrong, right? And while I think that it would be nice to have a little bit more nuance in that way, there are nuances in other ways that I enjoyed, in the sense of very straightforward conversations about what it means to be a person of color in a predominantly white academic institution. I understand that completely, having been one of the darkest people in my graduate program. Look at me. Look, that says a lot. That says a lot, right? So that it talks about how important it is that we create programs for higher institutions to be able to provide the resources necessary for members of marginalized communities to get an education. But that's a whole other story in and of itself, because that is very much so a contemporary topic. But this book takes place in the early 1800s. So if you're looking for something that is more about the accuracy of history, the author, R.F. Kuang, says it themselves in the beginning of the book, this is historical fiction. And I actually completely forgot that this was a fantasy, because it feels so grounded in establishing the time in history, the world building. In the world building, we do learn about the silver, the magic that is, functioning to make Britain this empire. But it's like in the background, kind of like we know it's there. We know these characters are being brought from other countries to become translators, to become these inscribers of the translations that ultimately make the magic function. But it's like not really about the magic. It's about trade. It's about colonization. It's about assimilation. It's about being an in-between person who wants to subscribe to multiple things because they were taken out of their motherland, but is not being given permission by either sides or acknowledgement that they can exist. And that's still a thing. We get perspective from 4 characters. No, okay, wrong. We don't get perspective. We don't get a POV from them, even though there are like little intermissions that we get from the other 3 friends of Robin, who is our main character. It's mostly in Robin's POV. It's like 98% in his perspective, right? But Robin is a Chinese male. And then there is Rami, who is Indian. He was taken from Calcutta. And then there is Victoire, who is a Haitian. And then there is Letty, who is white British. But all these individuals are marginalized for some reason, and that is the motivation behind what they do. I don't think it's far-fetched that these characters had so much growth and insight that we saw in their conversations that were relevant to modern contemporary issues, because just because these individuals who have existed the entire time, anytime that there's been colonization, these people have existed, these people who have been misplaced, these people who have been brought in to assimilate to another culture, doesn't mean that they haven't had these thoughts in some form or fashion. And that they've been specifically brought together is a very insightful opportunity for them to be able to have candid conversations about belonging, about being tokenized, about being exoticized, about being used. So what I like about it is that it takes it from different places, and it talks about how some of them are more empowered to speak up, especially the men are kind of leading that conversation, and how other characters like Victoire, who is easily the most marginalized in this group as a woman and as a Black woman, and who is being forced to leave her Creole language and culture behind because it's not considered commodifiable. It's not considered to be useful or insightful or worth anything in this capitalist society, that she takes time, be given the chance to have her voice. And it makes sense in retrospect because we are still in the society that like it values men, and then it values white women, and then it values men of color, and then like she is at the bottom of the totem pole. And it's so heartbreaking because they have this important conversation about it's in the time period where slavery is beginning to be abolished in different places, but just because something became a law yesterday doesn't mean that it is now accepted in the common like zeitgeist. It's not accepted in the cultural values of the people, especially because we're taking place in the land of the people who created this oppressive system. It's not just not a thing anymore. It takes forever. We are still dealing with it here in the United States. It's still a problem. So it kind of like tackles those heavy topics, which I really enjoyed. On the flip side of that, something that I think I did struggle with a little bit and that this kind of tried to answer was that we were told a little bit more than shown in the sense of two ways. One, in the relationships between our main characters, and also in the footnotes. So I'll talk about the first part. There were points in the book where Robin is saying, these are friendships and moments and highlights in our friendship that one day we will look back at and we will cherish and we will wish that we could have stayed there. However, it took me a while to build any kind of emotional connection with these characters, and I wish that we had seen that a little bit more. Like, I think I resonated and sympathized with them more because of their plight than who they were as individuals. And I think had this book been 100 pages longer, it's already like 500 and something pages. Had it been 100 pages longer to build that emotional connection for the reader, I would have been okay with that. I would not have minded because you would have gotten me to that point. But there are sections in here, interludes, that are in the point of view of those other characters, and those pulled me in. When those happened, I instantly fell in love with them, but they came later. And it's like, I would have very easily liked to have taken all of those and put them in the beginning, put them in the prelude, and then start the story from his perspective, from Robin's perspective, right? However, it's like, I see how and why it may have been a creative decision to move certain characters' backstories to later in the book, because it would have totally given away what the ending was going to be. But at the same token, I called it. Like, I knew what was coming. I just didn't know how it was coming. So simply because it was so heavy-handed anyway, I don't think it personally would have made a difference for me if they had just moved that stuff forward, because it's like, all right, I know exactly who is going to cause what scenario. I already understand their motivations, just how are they going to do it? And that would have been fine because I would have been emotionally invested in those characters. Second is the footnotes. The footnotes confused me for a little while because it was like, I couldn't tell which ones were real and not real. Like, I wish there was a key for these are footnotes based on facts and research, because it's very clear that R.F. Kuang is a linguist, and if you're a nerd and you're into language and etymology, you are going to eat this book up. I will say that as a caveat, though. If you are someone who studies linguistics, a lot of this may be basic information for you, and you may not enjoy it as much because I am not a linguist. I'm just a nerd. I thought this was absolutely fantastic. So the footnotes could have been better utilized if the actual factual things were with one key, and then things that were filling in gaps in the story were at another, right? Because there were some points in the story where it was like a footnote and it would say, The reason Robin said this or is currently giving an attitude or someone is acting a certain way is because there had been a previous situation and then describes a previous situation that involves racism or something like messed up that happened. And it's like, I get it. I get why they did that. I have a feeling that this book may have originally been a lot longer and they had to cut it down because this could have easily been 1,000 pages had they included all the different scenarios. And they may not have felt like they needed to include every single one, but for clarity, they gave like a little snippet of understanding. I feel personally that even without those footnotes, our main characters had more than enough justification to start a revolution. There was enough violence happening or being placed upon them. There was enough racism that they experienced. There was enough sexism that they experienced. There was enough tension in between the friend group of them navigating their own cultural differences. Moving forward to my thoughts about the ending in a non-spoiler way, if I can. I was very emotional. I was so upset. This holds no punches in talking about who the villain is. I saw some reviews, and I also watched Jess Owen's review of Babel. They made multiple videos, but like one specifically reacting to certain people's rant reviews about this.
Why are piggy banks so wide? Because they're filled with common sense.
White people are the villain in the story. And if you don't see that coming, it's literally about colonization from the POV of a marginalized character. So if you automatically from the get-go, I feel like R.F. Kuang told us straight out, fucked up shit's gonna happen. And you need to be ready to deal with it. And if you don't like that, if you can't stand the heat, don't walk into the kitchen. So if you're not used to seeing your people as the bad guy, probably pick this up with caution. But then again, who's been the bad guy in media for the longest time? Who have been the characters that die first? Who have been the people that have been villainized? So like, why not? Let it happen. Let's talk about the actual factual history of how things have been and who created all these systems of oppression. Who's the bad guy? So like, if this sets you off, you got some other demons that you have to work through, and I'm not gonna help you with that. So that is the most I'm gonna do, is give you a warning that if you don't like seeing white people as the bad guy, don't pick up Babel. But if you want a story in which it is tit for tat reality based in actual events, based around actual wars and actual social issues, but taking it into a historical fantasy-ish setting, you are gonna eat this up. And that's what I did. The magic system, I really enjoyed discussing the functionality of this magic system, the importance of a culture that is parasitic, like it takes over different cultures and it pulls in its resources, and once those resources are used up, it goes and finds another resource, and then it just kind of like eats itself, right? Because they needed individuals who were from other countries who were fluent in those languages to be able to run the establishment. But when those people generationally became too assimilated, they needed to go find other people. But what happens when you're colonizing and you're taking over different countries? Eventually, you know, they are determining which ones are valuable and which ones are not valuable, and then destroying the rest or everything along the way. So this was an extremely parasitic venture. I am now going to move into spoilers. So if you still want to read Babel after watching this video, please go do and then tell me what you thought of it in the comments. Even if you didn't like it, that's okay. That is okay, because even despite my criticism, I adore this book for what it did. I adore its very blunt writing style. I adore the fact that it talked about different situations that people who exist in these in-between spaces, whether it's biracial or whether it's bicultural or whether you've just been like, existing outside of your motherland, or you've been removed from a space where you didn't have the capacity to understand your heritage. Like, it's very straight on the page. This is this, and this is exactly what I'm saying, and there is no misconstruing what I'm saying. So if you don't like that, don't pick it up, but I love it, and that could be a turn on for other people, but it's a turn on for me. So I absolutely adore Babel. I love this to pieces. Moving into the spoilers. Thanks for watching if you're leaving. Continuing. So the ending. I love the ending so much. There was blood, there were flames, there was guilt. Let's talk about Robin's guilt. I understand why Robin went out the way that he did. Like I said, I wished it was a bit more V for Vendetta. I wished it was more badass. I wished it was more feral. However, we got some of that, but it wasn't as feral as I wanted. It was this reluctant hero. Robin did not want to die. And while I think there may have been a way for him to live, like he may have been able to escape back to China and put himself in a position of power where he has all this insight about England, and he could be helpful to the cause that he's fighting for, to get British power out of China. However, he would never be one of them. He would still be other. He would be othered no matter where he went. One, because his father is literally British, so he is biracial. But two, he didn't grow up in the culture beyond a certain age, and his views are skewed. And the reasons that he has this knowledge that he has is because he was removed from his culture. And so he understands that no matter what he does to become a part of that, he may never be accepted, especially because Britain is the enemy in this situation. So while he may be useful, he will never find home. And that's a lot. It may sound like just, well, why not? Why not? That's better than dying, right? But I think like that certain level of resiliency that comes with being able to constantly rebuild yourself to continue in the face of adversity comes with a certain level of trauma, all right? Victoire was able to get on a boat to leave Britain, to go to the United States, which had not yet abolished slavery, because Victoire is experienced in the trauma of survival. That is so important. Okay, the trauma of survival builds resiliency. And so sometimes when we tell people, wow, you are so resilient, it's not always a compliment, all right? That's what these characters go through. And they each navigate that pain in their own way. And each of their pains is unique and at different levels. And it's not about comparing anybody's pain, but it's about discussing that pain in a way that allows them access to come to terms with their trauma and regain some sort of hopeful power over it. And we may or may not agree with the ways in which they navigate that trauma or what they do with that feeling in order to regain a sense of power. I understand why Robin did what he did. Rami's death broke my heart. Broke my heart when Rami died. Broke my heart when Victoire decided to live, because I feel for her. That is not an easy thing to do, to be able to say, I have the ability to incite change, but my action of survival is a bigger rebellion personally than my death. That was so heart-wrenching. And while she felt bad about it, I do not blame her. Letty died a long time ago. I'm gonna say that in the point of Letty is the white female character who ultimately ends up becoming one of the bigger villains in this, right? And I think that while it may be easy to say, oh, but Letty, you had your friends and you should have just listened to what they were telling you. You should have just listened to their pains, and why didn't she understand? She has been stuck in this bubble. She is a product of the oppressive system in the sense that she is a woman and she is being pushed to the fringes of society and told that she's not important and she does have to fight for things. But she is not confronted with challenges in the same way that everyone else is. She's ousted for another reason, and she sees what her family has as something that is worth aspiring to, and she doesn't know that there can be anything else. So she's never looked at life in the lens of a person of color. And so for her all at once to be given the information that her people, her family, does horrible things and that her culture is responsible for mass genocide, that's a lot. That's a lot for her. And I'm not saying that to excuse her. She is wrong. She is horrible. She is just so messed up. And I hated her for what she did. Absolutely hate her for what she did. R.F. Kuang wrote a fabulous villain in my opinion. But this is why it wasn't surprising to me that when her bubble burst, she couldn't handle it. We cannot expect to just tell the oppressor, hey, what you did to me was messed up and here's why, and then to just be like, oh, you're right, let's change all the policies and let's do everything now. Because if that was the case, we could throw facts at each other at Parliament all day and think that things would get done. But do they get done? They don't. They don't get done. We could throw the amount of people that are suffering from different kinds of violences around the world, and we can also talk for hours about how, despite all those facts, despite the numbers, despite the testimonials, that things are not changing fast enough to prevent these things from happening on a continuous basis for centuries. They're still happening. There's still slavery. There's still racism. There's still all of these things. These system capitalism is the evil in here, right? It's still there. People are still being exploited. There are still wars. Despite learning about wars, despite knowing that wars kill people, we still go to war. It's too much to expect that you tell one person, I think, that, yeah, they know this thing now and they care about these people. Shouldn't they just do the right thing? That's a lot for her. She does not have the resiliency to be able to deal with that information. So when there is a scene when her friends are confiding in her the things that happen, and they end up having to console her when she's reconciling with her white guilt, it's so painful to read that they even have to do this. But this is nothing new. White guilt may be a more modern word in our terminology, in our vernacular, but that doesn't mean it didn't exist. That doesn't mean that didn't happen a long time ago. These had to be things that people experienced in order for there to be revolutions and for things to change. So it's really, really painful to see our characters go through this and think about it in the sense of that hasn't changed. That has not changed. But because of that, because she's too busy grappling with that guilt, that she does not have the capacity to see what it means for her to work through that guilt in a way that is constructive to anyone but herself. Because once again, the master does not bring the tools to dismantle the master's house. Audre Lorde quote. Right? She was not built with the tools necessary to be able to emotionally connect with others' plight that is not the white woman's plight. She can somewhat sympathize, but she's used to getting what she wants, and she's used to being on the top, and she's used to getting what she opens her mouth and people bend over backwards for her. And I did not expect her to give that up. I did not expect anything else but what happened. That being said, I'm going to move over to talking about the bars. One criticism that I do have that I think didn't make sense to me was at the end, like the way that it was structured around how Babel falls is that there are these bars in the building. And I don't really remember that being like hammered in at the beginning. So when that came around at the end, I was like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense. I think they did maybe mention in the beginning in the portion where it talks about like the rooms seem bigger on the inside than they are at the outside because there's like magical component, right? But I think that like the structure of it wasn't talked about enough, and that these bars in the building are connected to bars outside the building. We do get some information as to how the silver is more condensed or more pure in certain bars to give them longevity, but I think it didn't make sense to me, like why pulling them out at the end was the thing. Why not just like erasing or scratching out the words that were transcribed into them? So that part, it didn't sit right with me. However, I still loved it. It sounds like I'm complaining, but I still loved it. I absolutely do. I enjoyed that this ended up being more of a war of attrition rather than being straight out conflict with the scholars on the front lines of fire. That was different. So like if you're one of those people who enjoys magical books where like they learn the magic and they go out and they go to physical war with it, it's a little bit different from that. And I like that difference. I thought it was interesting because it focused on the idea like these guys are scholars, they're not soldiers, and that is a completely different mindset, which is why Griffin, who ended up being Robin's half-brother, was so important, because he was a soldier at heart. But not everybody's like that, and that doesn't make our other characters any weaker just because they're not soldiers. Like they're not the ones going out there and pulling the trigger, but they are doing so in other ways behind the scenes where they have different kind of power, and they spend a lot of time in here kind of grappling with the morality of it. Like, what is the cost of war? How do you know that what you're doing is making the impact that you want to make and that you're not just causing casualties along the way? So that conversation was very interesting to me, that it's like, okay, well, we want to cause a revolution, but we understand that there's going to be civilian casualty. However, how does one have revolution without casualty? Because if we don't do something, the system is going to continue, and those casualties are just as important. So that was super interesting. Again, 5 of 5 stars, despite everything that I'm saying. I know it sounds like I'm back and forth complaining and praising, but 5 stars for vibes. 5 stars for keeping me thinking. It took 2 days of mulling over this book before I could pick up another book, and that's how you know it's good. You know it's good when I'm in 2 buddy reads and both of my buddies finish way ahead of me, like weeks ahead of me at this point, because I needed to take it slow and really think and really process. That's how you know it's a hit. It's a grand slam. Thank you, R.F. Kuang. I need to read everything that you ever wrote. And one of my new favorite authors of all time, if the next thing I pick up from them is also a hit. So, my name is Steph. I post videos whenever I feel like it. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and let me know what other videos you want me to make, or if you like this style vlog. And I'll see you later. Bye.
On we go. What's it making, Mr. Wonka? Mr. Wonka, what the